Well, guys, it's time to take down all the happiness and joy. The party's over. And even though it's beautiful outside, I've got lots to do inside. So I got to get cracking. Good morning, guys. Happy Tuesday. It is absolutely stunning out here in Southern California, and I hate it. Why do I hate it? Because I'm still not over my daughter and granddaughter leaving, so I'm kind of in that, sad mode. And you would think the sun would cheer me up, but I need rain and clouds, to go along with how I feel. This just makes me miss them more because it makes me remember the days when they were here and we had all the doors open and we were in and out working in the backyard and the front yard, and all the kids were here and the house was just bursting with energy, and it was chaotic and loud, and I miss it so much. And now it's quiet and peaceful and clean, but I would trade it in a minute to go back to where it was. You know what they say, you don't realize you're in the good old days until they've passed. And those were definitely the good old days. So before I bring myself down anymore, I wanted to talk about something that I thought was kind of funny, and it cheered me up a little bit. I was thinking about, how my mom and my mother-in-law were like the queens of frugality. They grew up during the Depression, so they were all about, trying to save money and being frugal. And some of it was good, and I even do some of the stuff that they did, but some of it was kind of borderline nutty. It was like, okay, you got to draw the line somewhere, mom. There's, some things you can't do, but I get it. I understand why they were the way they were, but I can think back on it now and I laugh. But at the time, it was frustrating, the stuff that, we had to deal with. But they were just trying, and my mom had 7 kids. So God bless her. We were raised, and even though I know we were poor, we never went without food and we always had clothes. So she did something right. So I'll give her that. Now, as we got older, my it was my stepdad. She married my stepdad when I think she'd already had, well, 6 of us, and then she had my younger brother after that. But when they got married, my mom, she was working at Safeway. She was a cashier. We lived right across the street because she didn't drive, so she, had to live within walking distance. And that's where she met my stepdad, by the way. But she worked at Safeway. They got married, and he was a Marine. He was in the military, and my memories are a little blurry because I was just a little kid. I was like 4 or 5, I think, when they got married. And he adopted all of us except my 2 oldest brothers, because by then they were out of the house. So he adopted the rest of us, 4 of us. But yeah, we lived off of his military pension or military pay at that point, because my mom ended up quitting her job and she stayed home with us. My stepdad went to Vietnam. He did a tour. He ended up doing 2 tours, but I remember he was over there the first time for a year, and then I guess the second time. But while he was over there the first time, when he left, my mom was pregnant. And so she ended up having my brother while he was still in Vietnam. And it was tight. It was really tight. So for her to be able to keep food on the table with just one income, she did things right. But back then, like I said, she didn't drive, so there was no need for a car. Um, so that saved a ton, right? Not having a vehicle. And I don't know what my dad made. I don't know any of that stuff, but I just know that when you marry, you get an allotment. You get more money for how many kids you have. I don't know. Maybe that's incorrect, but that's how I remember it. So anyway, without further ado, these were some of the things that I remember that she did. And my mother-in-law did a lot of these as well, like saving all the plastic containers that everything came in from the grocery store. It didn't matter what it was. We washed them, we saved them. Never, I don't recall ever using them. I think maybe a few times they were kind of like their Tupperware, when they needed something like that. even the styrofoam on the hamburger trays. We had stacks of those. I don't know what she ever planned on using those for, but I just remember stacks and stacks of those. She'd wash them. I guess they were just too good to throw away. Rubber bands. I mean, everybody had tons and tons of rubber bands. Again, we probably used 2 or 3 out of the thousands that we had. She washed tin foil. We reused tin foil. She washed out baggies. We reused those. We didn't use paper towels ever. She would just cut up old bath towels and we would use those as rags. That was a huge luxury. 1-ply toilet paper. Do they even sell that anymore? And I think you end up using more because of that. So she would, this is embarrassing. We hardly ever went out to eat. But when we did, my mom would swipe. Back then they had sweet and low packets. And she always used sweet and low instead of sugar. She would swipe those. And it didn't matter how many they had in the little holder. That was embarrassing. I was always afraid she was going to get caught and we were going to get, I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but I did not like it. That was the borderline nutty stuff, but I know I'm not alone. I know plenty of other mothers that did that as well. Shampoos and conditioners. Well, we never got the good stuff. That was, she didn't care about that. But she would water them down. When the bottle got like half empty, she'd fill them back up. She'd just add more water to it. And we even sometimes would run out and we would use bar soap. Just use bar soap. It's soap. And we did. We had no choice. As far as food, she never bought name brand anything. That was a given. It was always generic. And back then, generic was just black and white. So you knew. And it was embarrassing when your cabinets were full of that. When I'd have friends over and they'd see all the generic stuff that we had, the labels, you could tell it was generic. It was the cheap stuff. But, and some of it was okay. And some of it was not. But it didn't matter. It was cheaper. And that was the whole point. But like I said, she was feeding a big family. So I'm not criticizing her in any way. I can laugh about these things now. I think it was kind of funny, but I think it was precious that she did this for her family. I really do. I appreciate that my mom went out of her way to make sure we had everything we needed, even if it wasn't the best. You know what I mean? She would take... This used to really bother me and my brother. She would try and fool us, and she never did. With milk, she'd buy a big old jug of milk, and the same thing, when it would get halfway down, she would fill it up she'd make Carnation instant milk, the dry milk, and she'd mix it half and half, and she'd swear you couldn't tell the difference. We could always tell the difference. It was awful. But, we had no choice. And we never got the good cereals. We never got the sugar sweetened cereals. We always got the Corn Flakes, Cheerios, Rice Krispies, stuff like that. And the worst thing that she would do was when the bags would get low, she'd combine them all into one bag of mixed cereal. You never knew what it was going to be. And it was like, when you pour it out, and she only allowed us to use so much sugar. Even though she wouldn't buy the sugar sweetened cereals, we were still allowed to put sugar on it, but we would use a ton of sugar. So she would monitor how much sugar we put on it. She would save her rotten bananas and make banana bread, which I do that. And, because that's the only way. That's what they're for, right? So, I remember that. The thing I didn't like though was when bread would get bad or get some mold on it. She'd make us just cut it off. That's not good for you. We know that now, but she's like, if you don't see it, it's okay. It's like, it's already spread, but we had no choice. If we wanted bread, we had to eat, what was there. And a lot of times she would freeze the bread. She'd buy it when it was on sale and she'd freeze it and it just dried it out. It just was never the same, hamburger. This is a good story. She would buy the cheapest hamburger. I think it was like 70% hamburger and 30% fat, right? And then to make hamburgers out of it, she'd put in just a bunch of crackers and eggs and chunks of onions and bell peppers. Ugh, it was more like meatloaf. But one time when my husband and I were living in sin before we were married, we came over and she had a barbecue and she asked him to do the grilling. Well, she'd already made the hamburger patties up and he just had to put them on the grill. Well, because they were so fatty and they had all this other junk in there, they caught on fire. And he was young. He was like 19 and he didn't know what to do. The whole grill went up in flames and we're like running out and, put them out with water or whatever. We still ate them. We had no choice, but yeah, that was how we made hamburgers. I just remember hating hamburgers so much. Big chunks of bell pepper, big chunks of onion. I like them now, but as a kid, I don't think any kid likes big chunks of bell pepper or onions in their burgers. That's not how they make them at McDonald's. I mean, come on. So yeah, we did that. Every other night was leftover night because she always made a big batch of whatever it was, whether it was goulash or chili or hamburger helper. It was cheaper to make a double batch. So you knew whatever you're eating tonight, you're eating tomorrow night too. I don't think people do that. That's very rare to have a leftover night. But that was, at least 3 nights a week were leftover night. So, and to be honest, my mom was not the best cook. Her heart wasn't in it. And she had to make her dollar stretch. So she just tried to find the cheapest meals possible. And yeah, I don't remember. She made some things that were good. I remember a few things. She made really good fried chicken, but that was rare. That was a lot of work. And then they came out with that awful shake and bake. And so all the housewives used that. Oh, that stuff was terrible. It really made me miss her fried chicken. We didn't use paper plates ever. Like I said, no paper napkins, no paper plates. Yeah, because we had to do dishes. There was enough of us that we all did dishes. Didn't have a dishwasher, not back in those days. We kept all the plastic grocery bags from the grocery store, every single one. We had a cabinet that we shoved them all in, and same thing. I mean, you can use those for some things, but you're never going to use that many. And forever, she always had them stuffed under there, hundreds. And once in a while, you'd pull one out. You'd use one in a small trash can for the bathroom or something like that, or if you had to carry something. But she had hundreds. We mended everything, even socks. I remember my mom darning my dad's socks. I don't think people do that anymore. Yeah, if anything got rips or anything in it, she would put patches on it. And that was before patches were cool. And they weren't even the cute patches. You can get the cute iron-on patches now. She would just make her own patches, and we had to deal with it. But it was okay because, we had lots of hand-me-down clothes. And I was the youngest girl. I had 2 older sisters, so I very seldom had new clothes until I started school. Then when we would go school clothes shopping, we would get some new things, but most of my play clothes were hand-me-downs. And we didn't shop. We shopped at Kmart. That was where we went. I always wanted to go to the more fashionable, cooler stores. They had like a Richmond Gordman back then. This was in the Midwest, and they carried the cuter clothes, but everybody knew when you shopped at Kmart because they only had certain things. And I was a Kmart kid. There was no name brand anything. That was for braggarts. And, she thought that was just terrible to have name brand stuff, people that thought they were too good. And it was like, no, just once I wanted a pair of Jordache jeans. My brother got Jordache jeans. He was younger than me. By then, most of us were out of the house. There was only 3 of us and they could afford those things. So I remember being jealous of him because he got to wear name brand stuff. Vans tennis shoes, that kind of stuff. We even washed our tennis shoes. I remember having this white stuff because we always wore white tennis shoes, and there was this special cleaner for them. And our mom would just, she wanted them to stay clean. So we always had clean clothes. And like I said, she made sure everything was mended. We never had, holes in our clothes, stuff like that. But we never got to go to a salon. I never knew what it was like to go get your hair cut in a salon. None of us did. My mom cut everybody's hair, even her own. So I grew up with that. And I remember what a treat it was when I finally got a job when I was a teenager and I got to pay to get my own haircut. Oh, I felt so glamorous just going in. And I remember it was back when Farrah Fawcett was, popular. And I went in and that's what I asked for, the Farrah Fawcett cut. the hair didn't make, Farrah Fawcett was gorgeous no matter what. You know, her hair was just a bonus. She had amazing hair, but we all wanted our hair to look like that. And there's only so much you can do. And I've always had very thin hair. So I got my hair cut, and I remember going out in public and somebody told me that I looked like, oh, there was this famous guy, singer, forget what his name was, and he was real short like I am, and he had blonde hair, he had longish hair, and they said, oh, you look like blah, blah, blah. And I remember just being crushed. I was like, I'm thinking I was like, you know, I looked like Farrah Fawcett, not even close. But yeah, God, what was his name? I think it was Paul something. It'll come to me later. Maybe if I remember, I'll put it in text. But yeah, but that was the first time I ever got my hair done. And I thought, you know, that was just a real luxury. But we didn't have, well, we didn't have internet back then. We didn't have internet. We didn't have cable. We didn't have cell phones. So even if we did, we probably wouldn't have had them. My mom would have never done that. And like I said, she didn't drive until I learned to drive. When I was 16, I talked her into driving because I was like, Mom, don't you want to drive? Don't you want to go somewhere? Because she worked, but she always had to work around my dad's schedule because he would have to take her and pick her up, or she'd have to get rides from the neighbors. And I thought, you know, wouldn't it be nice to be able to drive? But then they had to get a second car. My dad was not happy with me for convincing my mom to drive. Once she had that independence, boy, that changed things a lot for her. But it was good. It was good for her. But yeah, then they had to have a second car and insurance, and it changed our whole lifestyle. But I can't imagine. I know I went without having a car when my husband and I were first married, because I was a stay-at-home mom. There was no reason to. And then later on, we got a second car. But yeah, it's expensive. You have to, you know, car insurance for 2 cars, car payments, gas, maintenance. And that's one of the things I say, if you can, because not everyone can, but when you retire, if you can just downsize to 1 car, that will make a huge difference. But not everybody can. There's reasons for it. So hopefully you can at least have paid off vehicles. That makes a difference. And nowadays you have to have insurance. Back then it wasn't mandatory. It was necessary. I think everybody should have had it, but not everybody could afford it. So plenty of people went without, but now that's not even a possibility. It's literally illegal. You have to have insurance. So yeah, things have changed, but I like remembering all the things she did. I think it was sweet, and I appreciate that she did that for us, and my mother-in-law as well. But yeah, we laugh about it. We joke and tease about how frugal they were. And I've kept a lot of those same habits. I'm not going to tell you which ones, but I do some of that stuff myself as well. But that's okay. I don't think it's a bad thing. I haven't gone over to the nutty side. I don't steal from restaurants or anything like that. But you know, yeah, I do the baggies, or not the baggies, the grocery bags. But nowadays we have reusable bags, so we don't get as many. So I don't have that many. I only have a few, and I do use them. So, but yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys. You know, what do you do? Are there things that your moms did that you think were kind of, you know, out there? I'd love to hear if there's people that were even crazier than my mom. I would appreciate hearing that. So, but I don't know if my kids will carry over any of these. I've never asked them if they do any of these silly things that I do. Probably. I know I have one son in particular that's very frugal, and I'm sure he does some of this stuff. So if you do, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And with that, I'm going to say have a good day, because it is beautiful out and I need to go walking. So I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.